Thinking Basketball Podcast. My name is Ben. It's the playoffs. Welcome back. I'm ready. I'm amped up. I could jump to the moon right now. Not maybe because the season's going to be over in 7 weeks, but Cody, we actually finally had playoff basketball. The Knicks and the 76ers. They played this game on Saturday. By the time half the people are listening to it, they will have played two games. This was like a World Cup game combined with like a heavyweight boxing fight. It had the drama of a Lifetime movie. I don't know what was going on. Joel Embiid's playing. He's injured. He's playing well. He injures himself. Is it catastrophic? Is it Kevin Durant 2.0 from the finals? He's back on the court in the third quarter. The 76ers, all of a sudden, I texted you. I was like, Embiid's playing and the 76ers have a lead. And they were just down by like 15 points and he was injured. Oh, by the way, the Knicks won the game. That was awesome. And we're going to try to talk about it. But it happened 2 days ago, and I can barely remember a thing that happened in that basketball game. That's how crazy the weekend was.
First of all, Ben, drop podcast, Thinking Basketball. It's cleaner.
What happened?
Let's see. I think you introduced it. I don't know if I've ever heard Thinking Basketball, the podcast.
Did I say that?
I think you did. It's like selling some merchant, like some like Spaceballs type of thing, like Thinking Basketball, the sweatshirt. I guess we have Thinking Basketball, the sweatshirt, but we need a coffee mug. We just need a merchandise of Thinking Basketball. Anyway, the Knicks 76ers, very fun game. Like you're right. After Embiid goes down, I think that's in the second. Right, I think it's in the second quarter. Embiid goes down with the injury.
He injured himself on a self alley-oop dunk.
Sick dunk.
Unlike every other self alley-oop dunk we've seen this season, and we've seen a ton in the last 3 months, and we've documented them all. If you follow our work on the NBA smartest plays that we do, we've got a ton of them in there. Unlike maybe everyone in the history of the league that is done into space, Embiid did the self alley-oop dunk on the whole Knicks defense. He's like, well, there are 3 Knicks in front of me. I'll throw it off the backboard and dunk on their heads.
It was pretty incredible. I think if we made a rankings of the best non-All-Star game self alley-oops, that's pretty high up there, to be honest. Like, obviously, you get the All-Star, you have like the T-Mac, you get the Vince Carter.
T-Mac did it. Hold on, T-Mac did it in a game. I don't know what you're talking about. All-Star games. That's easy in the All-Star games.
But didn't he originate it in the All-Star game? I thought that was the first time T-Mac busted out the self.
I don't know, but he did it in a regular season game over 20 years ago. So
okay.
Yeah.
T-Mac was awesome. Should we just talk about T-Mac
for a while? He was pretty good at
Okay.
basketball.
So, okay, here Embiid goes down in the second quarter. Obviously, that's not what anyone wants to see. And then you're right, in the third quarter, Embiid comes back. 21-5 run the 76ers go on, right? 21-5 run. Okay, he just completely changes the tenor, and we've talked about a lot of different reasons this might be the case. Obviously, their entire offense changed. I mean, B-ball Paul is out there. Like, we love Paul Reed around these parts, but, you know, he just can't do the exact same sorts of things that Embiid does, especially with, like, the delay action, being able to bring him up the court. You had a great video breaking down some of the stuff that Nick Nurse is doing to help open up the game for Embiid. The fact that he's bringing the ball up, give him a more of a chance to survey the court, open it up that way a little bit, and that just brings so much more of a tenor to the game. So, obviously, the game's a lot better when he's out on the court. What do you want to say there?
Reed doesn't draw any attention in those actions. So Embiid draws attention as a roll man and as a shooter, and so it helps Tyrese Maxey immensely. We've talked about that, but it also forces all the defensive guys in that area to kind of, am I going to have to help on his roll? Is someone going to have to go take his pop? And then how does that help the peripheral players? Well, if you are a guy like Kelly Oubre Jr., you want to cut into space and finish downhill going that way. That's a strength of his. And by the way, I thought Kelly Oubre Jr. had a great second half, flew around defensively, and that was part of the change in that. And then I'm sure this is a series that we have the potential, depending on health, to come back to multiple times. We're only one game in. So let's not just forget that going down the stretch of this game, it was Josh Hart making threes, the Knicks making threes. We're going to take the ball out of Brunson's hands, and all these other guys are going to make threes. And it was just like, oh my God, it was such vintage Knicks, Cody. The Garden was popping. They got like 112 offensive rebounds in the fourth quarter, I think. It was spectacular.
I don't want to get like misty and nostalgic, but there really isn't anything like a playoff atmosphere like at the Garden. Like, it's crazy when they're at MSG. Like, you can feel it through the TV. Although I got to say, OKC seemed to match it. Like that had some wild energy. But I don't want to get to that.
Minnesota? What about Minnesota?
I mean, yeah, that was good, but to me, the other two stood out just a little bit more.
Okay, we have to stop the show right now. Let's power rank the top 8 home court environments in the opening weekend of the NBA playoffs. What say you?
My God.
Let's go.
Do you actually have a ranking? I would love to hear what your ranking is.
Minnesota was spectacular. New York was. Okay. I'll go New York 1, Minnesota 2,
number 2,
OKC 3, Denver 4. Who else plays playoff basketball? We're running out of games that I've actually seen.
Did you watch the Boston game? Can you even rank them?
Oh, I saw the first quarter of the Boston game.
Okay.
They're at a bit of a handicap because they're like warming up. They're in like a warm-up situation with Jimmy Butler not playing. It started 17-2, and I was like, can you have a mercy rule in basketball? Like in Little League, if you get up too much, is there a mercy rule? We'll put Celtics 5.
Cleveland?
Who else is left?
Cleveland,
Milwaukee, and what's the final series?
I don't know.
This is the best when we forget basic things that all the listeners know.
Phoenix, Orlando.
The Clippers. The Clippers.
Oh, yeah, Clippers.
Yeah, those guys are at the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll put that group at the bottom. What did I say? Boston 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do Milwaukee and Cleveland in some kind of 6-7 combo, and Clippers number 8. But it was okay. It was okay at Staples. The Clippers had a little. Yeah, they had a little. The crowd was in it. It was nice.
No, I saw somebody send out a tweet like before the game, and there's like, look, nobody's here. But I was watching them, like, actually, it looks like there's quite a few people there. Like, I don't want to be that guy, but it's like there's actually a few people that showed up. I think the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse in Cleveland used to be the Quicken Loans.
Are you going number 8 on that?
No, I'm just saying that back when it was the Q, I think it was the Quicken Loans Arena. Like, I think they used to juice it with sound. That's cheating. Like, if you have to juice your crowd.
The Indianapolis Colts used to do this in football. I think that disqualifies you from the home court crowd advantage. It has to be organic. The crowd actually has to create the environment.
Yeah, that doesn't count at all.
We're not piping. It's not the bubble. We're not piping in fake fans.
Oh my God, we can forget about just live streaming in.
This show's drunk already. I thought you would eat up a top 8 home court power rankings over the weekend. Let's get back on track.
So, I was going to say Phoenix. Knicks, 76ers. Something you talked about, the fact they're trying to get the ball out of Brunson's hands. They sold out on this strategy so much just because they know that Brunson is, I don't know, he was either at the top or right near the top of the league in terms of percentage of possessions throughout the entire season. And I mean, it makes sense. You see everyone else that's on the Knicks and they just really struggle to put the ball in the basket. And the 76ers, like Nick Nurse came out and he's like, hey, some of these guys like Josh Hart are going to get wide open corner threes. Like, there's not going to be someone within 15 feet of him, and they're going to be taking it. And if we lose, we end up losing. And I mean, Josh Hart, what ends up happening, he scores 9 points in the last 8 minutes, I'm pretty sure, or something like that. No, he scored more than that. He only had 9 points with 8 minutes left.
He was raining threes. Cody.
He scored like 13 points in those last few minutes. So I feel like I don't want to come in like being critical, but I'm not being critical because game one is trying some stuff out and then seeing where you have to adjust. I'm pretty sure Philadelphia is going to come out and not sell out so hard against Brunson, okay? There's been a little bit of a study going around Twitter right now, some of the stat folk out there that's talking about like some kind of study, a Twitter study.
Peer-reviewed Twitter study?
Exactly, with the good old-fashioned Twitter analytics folks. But that 3-point percentage alone seems to correlate with winning in the NBA more than pretty much any other stat. And even more than like the volume, rim attempts, things like that. So if you're giving a team just a lot of wide open 3-point point shots, even if it's Jalen Brunson and it's one guy taking the ball a lot, I don't necessarily think that's going to be a recipe going forward. So I'm expecting in game 2 to see Philadelphia just backing off a little bit on how intensely they play Jalen Brunson.
Should we skip over this study? I'm very confused. The study says if you make a lot of threes, you win?
Yeah.
At like a
honestly,
game level.
Not even a lot. No, it's 3-point percentage more than volume or anything else. Like if you just look at the 3-point percentage of games.
But at a game level, not at a team level.
At a game level, yes.
At a game level.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a little tautological for me. That's like saying that we found out that the team that scores more baskets than the other team tends to win.
But this is my point. It was correlated more than these other stats, too. Like, they ran it against some of these other ones. I didn't deep dive it. I saw it. A couple smart people I respect were sharing it. And I thought it was kind of interesting going forward.
Okay. And you think, in this case, they should adjust the strategy because daring Josh Hart, who's not a terrible three-point shooter, Josh Hart to shoot threes as a 34%-ish career three-point shooter, whatever it is, might not be a good idea. He made a ton down the stretch, finished 4 of 8 in this game with 22 points. So you think they might want to adjust that?
I think so too. I think they're going to try and play Brunson a little bit more straight up, maybe not trap him quite as aggressively and make their guys fly around a little bit more. That's just one adjustment that I'm expecting to see in game 2.
Okay, see, the thing for me, and I do think we'll see some adjustments on that front, has less to do with the three-pointers. Deuce McBride also hit 5 of 7 from downtown in that game. He's fun. The whole Knicks are very fun. But the offensive rebounding, when you put your defense in rotation and you're scrambling around and playing 4-on-3, you're more vulnerable to offensive rebounding. The Knicks already want to crash. And with Embiid, whatever's going on with his knee, physical, psychological, we don't know. We're not doctors. Not going to try to read too much into it, but he looks, I don't know, 50, 60%. He doesn't look like he did before the Orlando situation, but I did think for spurts in this game, again, he started to move a little bit better and be a little bit more aggressive. And there was this whole thing from Lisa Salters during the game about how it's psychological with him and how he's not trusting the knee as part of the recovery. And so he's very nervous about further injury when he feels discomfort. So we might, I don't know what to make of it. All this is to say, Cody, where he is right now, they're not going to beat you in transition. They're not going to play with a ton of pace and fly down the court in 4- and 5-man fast breaks. And so that allows the Knicks to crash the glass harder. The Knicks want to crash the glass hard anyway. We talked about the tagging up technique that they use with Dave Dufour earlier in the season. And New York grabbed. Are you sitting down?
No, I'm sitting down. I'll sit down more.
You look like you're sitting down, but I never know if you're standing at a table there in your basement that's not a basement in the Midwest and your decor.
I'm actually just holding a wall sit. Like every time we do this, it's just, got to do quads, guys out, thighs out kind of mentality. Man.
That was my default assumption, but I didn't want to just go there on the radio. I thought that might be a little much for people. New York grabbed almost half of their own misses in the basketball game. That means when New York shot the ball and missed, half of the time they just went and got it back. 49% offensive rebounding. I'm not going to pull any fancy numbers on where that ranks in playoff history or anything like that. That would have been a good thing to do beforehand. But as I told you, I forgot everything that happened during this game. It's all flooding back to me right now. If you're not familiar with what that means, the league average is like you might grab 20% of your offensive rebounds now, 25% for a while. It's going down as teams play with more space and they don't want to crash and give up fast break opportunities. But even in its heyday, it was like 30%. We think we don't have the actual numbers before 1974, but almost 50% of your misses is insane. So the Knicks had a 127 offensive rating in this game. It was one of the highest offensive ratings over the weekend, and we should talk about that because this officiating is spectacular. You're allowed to have a body again on defense. You're allowed to make contact with people. Your arms aren't a violation of humanity by existing next to your torso. And that means New York shot 39.6% from the floor in this game and posted a 128 offensive rating because they grabbed 23 offensive rebounds.
So I actually just pulled it up really quickly. This would be the 56th highest offensive rebound percentage in a single playoff game in NBA history going back to
74. Yeah,
going back to 74. Interestingly, do you even want to take a stab at what team in NBA history would have the highest offensive rebound percentage in a single playoff game?
I got to think it's a Dennis Rodman team. That's my gut.
It's actually not a Dennis Rodman team would be number 2, but not number 1, Ben.
Is it a Moses Malone team?
It is actually, Ben, a 1994 New York Knicks playoff team. So the
that's
Knicks
interesting.
Hold it. Yeah,
the
with
Knicks.
A 60.9% offensive rebound rate.
1994. Was that in the Eastern Conference playoffs? Who were they playing? The Pacers?
They were playing the Pacers.
Yeah. What game in that series was that? Like game 4 or something?
It was game 7, it looks like.
Game 7. Could you imagine grabbing 60% of your offensive rebounds in game 7?
And they won by 4. So that seems like a fun one to go back and check out at some point.
Yeah. Reggie Miller got like a flagrant foul. They were down by 1 or 2, and he deliberately fouled at the end of the game with 5 seconds left or something. And they called it a flagrant foul. That was a classic. That was the series where he had 25 in the fourth quarter. And I think there's a whole documentary about this. We don't need to do storytelling on this series right now. But
well, just give a little bit more numbers. Patrick Ewing had 11 offensive rebounds, and Anthony Mason had 6 offensive rebounds. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
oh, we should do more Anthony Mason content.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Absolutely, Bucks legend.
What hairstyles that guy had. All right, so that's only game 1 of that series. That was yeah, go ahead.
I want to shout out something from the second half because Joel Embiid, I don't know if, like you said, it was the injury thing coming back. He was in his head. They did go on this run, but individually, he had a much rockier scoring half there. I think he only made like 2 out of 11 or something from the field. I thought they played him straight up with Mitchell Robinson better than I've seen most defenders play Joel Embiid straight up. Like most teams are sending doubles. He's kind of waiting for that, kind of kick the ball out, Tyrese Maxey attacking second side. But this time it was sort of like, hey, go at Mitchell Robinson and you take it. And I thought he did a pretty spectacular job between the offensive rebounding and just the individual matchup with Embiid. I thought that was a really big key to how they were able to weather some of that storm in the second half.
Yeah, it's a great call out. Although I do think there's some fatigue with Embiid and some of those fourth quarter possessions that you're thinking of. Whereas in the third quarter, there was that spark of the Philadelphia system, the Philadelphia offense, where Embiid's making passes and they have space and the center of the floor is open and it's just very difficult to handle, and they're making threes, and they just went on this huge run where they lost this game, but they also ended up with one of the better offensive performances of the entire weekend. And I thought a lot of that was that third quarter burst. Man, did you see that like 3/4 court bounce pass that Embiid threw off one hand?
Yeah.
That was ridiculous.
Oh my God. He was bringing it up for that too, wasn't it? Like
he was dribbling.
Off the dribble.
Yeah.
Oh, that dude is so talented. Yeah, really cool. Okay. So cool coaching stuff in terms of there's some boxing one with Brunson and stuff like that. It was great, blah, blah, blah. Nick Nurse is a great genius. Why didn't they foul when they were down 5 with 30 seconds left? Can somebody explain this one to me?
Yes. Sometimes in life, when you perform athletics or host podcasts or whatever, you in the moment, you don't always do what you want to do. The brain and the body don't always work together. And like, I got it. The first couple seconds, they're going for a steal, or they wanted to foul. They wanted to try to get Hacker Robinson again, because Mitchell Robinson shoots like under 50% from the line, and they had just fouled him. Although credit to Mitchell Robinson, I think he trained both of them, right?
Yes, he did.
So I think that was in their head. 5 or 6 seconds go by, and then it's like, hey, Josh Hart and I can't remember if McBride was out there, Jalen Brunson, they're slippery guys, and all of a sudden they get like the shot clock's down to like 10 or 9. And I just think everyone in the building, I think the New York crowd, they can be such a smart crowd. They switch to like the standing ovation, like the game. We know the game is over. There's not going to be a foul. I think that's it. They just, brain cramps all around, Cody.
Yeah,
brain cramps all around.
Okay, yeah, I didn't want to lay blame on anyone, but that seemed like a pretty bad mistake to end the game. But that was
they should all
series.
be blamed. Yes, we should point the finger and castigate them down into the third circle, not the ninth, the third.
Wow, I don't even remember off the top of my head which third is, but I don't think it's great. It's not a pick.
It's not great. It's not great. Yeah,
it's not.
I'm being
PB&J.
sarcastic, of course.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
So,
we should have more sympathy for these athletes. What were you going to say?
Anything else from this game you want to talk about?
I wish I could remember more of this. So many things happened in this game emotionally. I remember being drained after the game and having a hard time recovering and watching the next game.
I did. Here's my next question about this series. Are they really going to have to depend on Kyle Lowry playing 38 minutes a game?
Oh, because D'Anthony Melton's still out. Yeah,
I'm aware, but Kyle Lowry played 38 minutes in this game.
Well, there's just injury question marks all around, and I don't think we need to get so much to talk about and so many things happening. I don't think we need to get stuck up on them. We know every one of these teams. The Heat don't have Jimmy Butler. Mm-hmm. The Pelicans don't have Zion Williamson. So we know those types of injuries for certain. But Embiid and Melton, I mean, that changes the entire landscape of the team. When those guys are going, Philly, we've talked about it before, is playing at over a 60-win pace, basically better than any regular season team than the Celtics. The Clippers, and maybe this is a good segue to that game. Kawhi Leonard, he has unpredictable inflammation in his surgically repaired knee. And that means, he could play in game 2, or it's Kawhi Leonard's knee, so he might not play for 9 months or something. We have no idea what's happening. Giannis Antetokounmpo, we've talked about him. He has the calf strain. Is that something that keeps you out for a substantial period of time in playoff years? Like, you miss 3 weeks in the playoffs, your goose is cooked, or is he just back in game 2 and he's Giannis? These are all these questions around injuries, and I still think the Philly series has this because as long as, and I'm going to include Melton here, as long as the 76ers' health is trending in the right direction with Embiid and Melton, I think they have a good chance to win the series. Without those guys, you can see it. The Knicks are just good. The Knicks are just good, and they do things well, and they're already up 1-0. Cody, you got Knicks in 5, right?
I did say Knicks in 5, yeah.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. Feeling pretty good about that?
I stand by everything that I said on the preview pod.
Did you have Clippers in 5 as well?
No. I said the Mavericks would win this series.
You were a Mavs believer.
I was a Mavs believer.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get rid of this past tense nonsense. I'm a Mavs believer because I stand by everything that I said. You want to talk about that game?
That game was amazing.
That
game was amazing. It's funny because I think you said something in our group chat at some point over the weekend where you were like, the games have not been very competitive.
Yeah.
And I think you literally meant there weren't any close games.
Yes.
But the games, to me, have been hyper competitive. And sometimes in a playoff series, like in game 1, I'm looking at the indicators more than the scoreboard sometimes, and I'm looking at what teams are doing, where they have physical advantages, the sort of tenor, where they can dictate their strengths and weaknesses, any adjustments that they've made right out of the gate. That's what I'm looking at in game 1. And I thought across the board for a ton of these series, the game 1s were incredible. Now, sometimes the game is over by the fourth quarter, but that's a lot of basketball in the first 3 quarters where some really, really, really important stuff happens. And I think it's just as a culture, people have conditioned too many people to say, only watch the last 6 minutes of the game. That's where everything happens. And it's like that Minnesota-Phoenix game, we might get to that later, but it was just like a slow burn for like 2.5 quarters with the Wolves just gnawing away at the bone a little bit. And then it was like, poof, Anthony Edwards, explosion. Jaden McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker are everywhere. Rudy Gobert, offensive rebounding, shot blocking. Rudy Gobert guarding Kevin Durant. Why not? Let's just do that. Let's switch that up. So the game turns into a 25-point game in the final score in the fourth period. But I thought there were a ton of games like that, and that takes us to Dallas and the Clippers. Because Dallas and the Clippers was like a 30-point lead in the first half. But as we looked at in our video today on the Thinking Basketball YouTube channel, like there was a ton. That first half was crazy. There was a ton of stuff going on in that first half. And if you weren't paying attention, and I think a lot of Dallas people were angry about this. They're like, what are you talking about? They were just stagnant. They just didn't play their normal game. Yeah, they didn't play their normal game because the Clippers were like, welcome to Terrence Manville.
It was weird. The first thing that I noticed in that game was just Ivica Zubac just going down. It's like, I'm going to punch Daniel Gafford in the mouth a couple of times. It was unreal. Just like two straight up, like 2004, we're going to start with giving it to our big man. But it felt like a statement moment where it's like, oh yeah, you think all these other guys are going to beat you from the perimeter? No, we're just going to send this guy down to hit you with a hook shot. It was 2 straight possessions. And immediately from the start, I'm like, okay, we're on to something here. This is some good stuff. And I think he had a couple other, like he was on pace for 50 at one point. He had like 10 in the first 6 minutes of the game.
It was 50.
It was unbelievable. I thought we were seeing the Zubac game. Like, everyone calm down here. But that was, yeah.
Well, so we talk about how Cody loves his rim protection stats around these parts. Mm-hmm. And we recently did a video on Nikola Jokic's defense. That's also on the Thinking Basketball YouTube channel. I loved making that video. It was a lot of fun. And we really dove into some of these numbers we have around paint protection. And I'm surprised, Cody, that you haven't noticed yet that the only guy in the league who looks like Rudy Gobert in terms of what happens when his team is on the court versus what happens when his team is off the court at protecting the paint, the changes in the shot profile at the paint. The only guy in the league this year that also looks like Rudy Gobert is Ivica Zubac for the Clippers. And, of course, he has some, let's say, presence offensively as part of their unit, not just because of the post mismatches that we saw, but things like offensive rebounding and being a rim runner as well in that system. So he's a big takeaway to me in the sense that, one, he's just one of the reasons I like the Clippers. I think they just, like, they don't have a center who's just a horrible hole in the lineup. It's the opposite. He's good. 2, we come into this game with, hey, remember what Luka did to Ivica Zubac the last 17 times they played? Remember that? Remember the playoffs? Remember switch 3, switch layup, switch layup.
Yep, absolutely.
And the opposite happened. The exact opposite happened in this game on both ends of on the floor, to the point where in the third quarter they just stopped going after Zubac. They're like, that's it. We're going to post up Luka and create our advantage that way. And I think this in many ways is the most fascinating series to me still right now. We'll see what happens with Kawhi Leonard. But you have Ty Lue, who's so good at making these adjustments and sort of matchup-specific game plans within a series. You have Jason Kidd, who maybe isn't quite as good as that. So what's he going to come back with? What are they going to go to? Luka's got counter after counter. I'm not worried about Luka. When you have that much skill with the ball, which he has, it's really a question of like, can you chip away? How much can you chip away? Can you get a little? Can you take a little of his efficiency away? And here's the thing I love about this game plan, Cody. If you haven't seen the video, the short of it is that they want to drop. They're throwing a lot of different coverages at Luka. That's number 1. But number 2, when they drop, they're really asking the on-ball defender to do a lot of work, fighting through screens, so the Clippers aren't just like soft switching stuff with their wingy athletic guys that they have. Thank goodness the basketball gods have come through for us. But 2, here's what I love about it. Number of plays where you drop the big man, Zubac, back up Mason Plumlee, but Zubac is a much better shot blocker. You put him right at the rim like Rudy Gobert, like a goalie, like a stone wall. And then you put the Hawk, Terrence Mann, or whoever else is out on him in the possession, Russell Westbrook. I mean, they had all kinds of guys who were fighting through these screens in this game. Amir Coffey, Paul George, whatever it is. James Harden had a really good possession. I was like, did James Harden just have the best defensive possession of his life? That was sick. You put that guy out there, and what you basically say is, we're going to give Luka a window where he has to come downhill at full speed toward Ivica Zubac. And if he wants to do his thing, where he goes really slow and puts you on his hip and kind of snakes around the screen and tries to play the angles, our big wing guarding him is going to recover. That's the first thing. And B, we are going to make sure that we still have a big there to some degree. Now, Luka is probably going to make some changes individually, just in terms of how he attacks that. But the thing I love about this is it asks Luka to perform a weakness. It is not a strength of his to straight line come downhill with 1 or 2 explosive dribbles and finish into traffic. That's not how he's deadly at the rim. He's deadly at the rim by being patient and using tricks and tempo and carving out space. And so on its face, there's a brilliance of the game plan in my head, which is like inviting a player to do something that he isn't as comfortable doing. And in the first game, in the first half, he didn't really make a ton of adjustments there. So I'm fascinated to see how this plays out as the series goes on.
And I think a key part to Zubac's rim protection was his rim deterrence out here. Because when you were watching the Mavericks play, like one of the first things I thought about was I saw a guy, I think like PJ Washington drove in, and I thought he kind of had a nice angle to make it all the way to the basket, and then he kicked it out. And I feel like that happened a few times where maybe Luka got a little deeper than the Clippers would have wanted, and then he kicked it out. I'm like, what's going on? It feels like the Mavericks just keep hunting the kick out. Like, why aren't they going for the shot? I think a big part of that is credit to Zubac, who's just turning away everything. Like, these guys are driving down there like, oh my God, I didn't expect this absolute monster to be waiting down here. And I think we shouted at him out briefly during the Thinkies, but he definitely didn't make the actual podium or even the top, 5 or so in rim protection. But I don't know, maybe we need to revisit that. I don't want to do it after one game, but he did a tremendous job of, I thought, turning away a lot of these second side drives that the Mavericks had. And then just major shout out, like you said, to the point of attack defense. You have one play that Russell Westbrook has where I think he is just like glued to Luka Doncic, glued to him. And yet he's still so active that I forgot who it was. It could have been Gafford. I think it's Gafford that's trying to hand the ball off to Luka. And Westbrook's just like has his hand up here swinging around and he gets the steal. Right? And so these guys are just doing such a great job of staying completely connected to him. You have the one play where I think Terrence Mann is glued to Kyrie Irving, turns into a turnover where Maxi Kleber just kind of throws it away and there's a miscommunication. This is the best time of year for defense because, it's always a misnomer that the NBA doesn't play defense, but the level of especially perimeter defense that's ratcheted up in the playoffs is just so significant. And you see how important it is to have all of these guys that you can throw out there and just be able to execute like all these different schemes and being able to execute with a high level of energy, being stuck to some of these high level players.
I want to talk about that defense in a second and the way the game is being officiated and what that means for the playoffs. But the really fascinating thing to me about this series, and the reason why I have not been, I feel like the only person left who has not become a Mavs believer, is Gafford and Lively. It's nice to have two of those guys, but they're basically the same. They are, someone mentioned this in the comments this morning, they are thin centers, so they don't set big bruising screens. So they're not like great experienced thunderous screeners for Luka at the point of attack. Then they're not great in the short roll. Also, both of them are non-shooters. So you noticed a little Maxi Kleber action as the game went on where they go small and they take both of those rim running centers, shot blocking centers off the court, and they have to play like that. But I don't know if that's a great lineup for them, because when they have one of the bigs on the court, then you have a guy like P.J. Washington or Derrick Jones Jr. That's not a great shooter either. So now you have two non-shooters and Luka with the ball. You lose your spacing, and it allows the Clippers to shrink the floor even more and help out in the paint and sit in the driving gaps. And so is there a way you can make an adjustment to keep those guys on the court, or are they getting played off and you have to play from a fundamental weakness because of that? This combination of like, my bigs aren't great short roll passers, but they're also non-shooters, but I also have a couple additional extra non-shooters. And, you know, the Clippers, I think, will live with them, the Derrick Jones Jr.'s of the world who kind of got played off. He didn't come back in the second half in this game. They will live with them taking a ton of threes or even attacking closeouts and taking 10-foot floaters over guys like Ivica Zubac in the paint. And I'm just fascinated to see how that develops going forward, especially because I think Dallas and especially Doncic will have some counter punches in game 2 as we move forward.
And I wonder if that was, you know, Maxi Kleber ended up playing more minutes than both Gafford and Derek Lively. So I don't know if that was an attempt to try and get, some kind of variation, because I think philosophically, when you go into team building, especially into a playoff situation, you don't necessarily want to just keep repeating the same scheme that you're able to throw out there. And everyone get the bingo cards ready, but you go back to like the 2020 Bucks when they have like one of the best defenses ever before the bubble. I mean, their defense is basically like Brook Lopez drop defense. He goes to the bench. Who comes in? Robin Lopez plays this tremendous drop defense, and there's just no way to change that. And I think a big part of what they've been able to do in those couple of years after is like, oh, but they got Bobby Portis coming in. They can kind of go to more of a hedging type of defense when he's in. And I think that's so important schematically for a team to be able to say, hey, sure, we have this one guy that's really good at playing a specific kind of way. Maybe we have two guys that are good at playing a specific way, but we need these other guys that can come in and run a different style of basketball just in case somebody is prepared for it. And I think you hit it really on the head here. I think you even made a comment like, what happens if we just merged Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford together? Yep. And I think in this case, it would in fact be better, right? Because then if that doesn't work, if like the Daniel Lively combination like doesn't work, like all of a sudden you can bring in somebody else that actually can run a different sort of scheme. So I don't know. I think this game was a really interesting test case in being able to have schematic diversity, and I am interested to see, like you said, are they able to keep those guys? Are they able to give them some minutes in a way? Can they counter what the Clippers are doing so that you can get minutes to these guys? Because they really usually do have great synergy with Luka, and without that synergy, the Mavericks are missing a huge part of the punch that they're able to bring to their offense.
Who felt like the bigger team in this game to you?
Felt like the bigger team?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Clippers did.
Yeah.
I think Zubac by himself elevates the size.
Exactly. And I think what's so interesting, that's a theme to me in the playoffs right now. If you can have a lot of size, we've seen it in the last couple of years. We've seen it with Denver last year, with Lakers the last year, with your Bucks in 2021, with the Celtics run in 2022. If you can have a lot of size, but you don't lose out on skill, meaning you're not just playing clunky oafs like the old days. It's not the 94 Knicks, and you're like, we got to get Charles Smith and Charles Oakley and Patrick Ewing was pretty skilled, but like, you know, a bunch of non-shooters and guys to rebound. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about big teams that still provide a decent amount of skill, whether it's shooting or attacking closeouts or extra passing or short roll passing or ball handling or things like that. And I think that was a theme throughout the first weekend, at least for me. Like you look at Minnesota and Phoenix, okay? Minnesota and Phoenix, of course, Gobert. There's been so many sort of talking points over the years about him in the postseason and getting played off the court, and he's rigid and struggling in space. Well, boy, did it look different when he had Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards just hawking the holy hell out of whoever had the ball. Anthony Edwards, we might need to have a whole Anthony Edwards episode at some point. I mean, his movement patterns, there was one play in that game where Grayson Allen was guarding him in isolation, and he made Grayson Allen look like the game glitched. Like it was just like, well, I wonder if Grayson Allen, nope, okay. Edwards is already shooting. Grayson Allen's still at the 3-point line. He doesn't know what happened. And Cody, you talked about it on the Thinkies. He just unloaded some of those defensive possessions where his movement patterns were legit 1989 Michael Jordan, and you're just like, oh my God, this is the perfect definition of man defense and, getting around screens and just chasing people. The point is, if you're really big, and Minnesota's really big, and the Clippers felt bigger in this game, and there's certainly maybe even the Knicks that we talked about on the glass, like, if you have that size, but you don't lose out on that skill, basketball is a game of height. That's just a recipe for success. And then you add in the additional physical contact that's been allowed since the points of emphasis and the intensity in the playoffs. And I think it's a ticket to success. I'm going to be watching it closely.
Well, I mean, just to put a cap on the Clippers-Mavericks game, I think my main premise when as I'm pro Mavericks in the series, not pro as in I'm cheering for the team. It's just I thought
you're
team,
biased. Yeah, no,
you're biased.
You think they're going to win, so you're biased.
Yeah, the fact that Luka is actually +3 in that game, that's me spinning it in a biased way, right? That's somehow biased in that sense. But they're huge. I think if you were to look at these lineups and you were to give them to people and be like, which team is bigger? I don't think people would specifically pick the Clippers. You wouldn't look at that lineup and say, oh, the Clippers are so much bigger. I mean, obviously
that's because people don't know who Paul George is anymore. He's like the invisible man.
That's literally where I was building up to. Paul George is a cheat code on defense because he's kind of the nominal power forward. I guess if you have to give somebody a position, but there's one play. I don't remember if it was in the video or not, but I forget who it is. They're hard hedging against Kyrie Irving. So, he gets the pick and roll. They send two guys up to there. So all of a sudden there's going to be some kind of power play that the Mavericks could take advantage of. But you know who's kind of splitting the difference, standing at the nail? It's Paul George, and he's like, I dare you to either make this pocket pass to the roller or the guy in the perimeter, because I'm just a spider, and I'm not going to allow either of that. And Kyrie couldn't. Paul George completely shut that down because Kyrie knew he could basically be in two places at once. Paul George just a genius on defense.
Would you say he's the best perimeter helper in the league? Would you say that?
Well, okay. I also think there are some other quite good perimeter helpers in the league, but Paul George is definitely worthy of being mentioned in the Thinkies there.
For those who missed the Thinkies, first of all, come on. You can't miss the Thinkies. What's happening? If you're going to listen to this podcast today, you got to go listen to the Thinkies. I was the only one of the voting body who voted Paul George for best perimeter helper, and he does get some love. It's not like when we nerd out on defense, other people don't give him love. But I think that his particular skill set, we had a whole conversation about how it kind of exists in the shadows. And sometimes I feel like his whole game exists in the shadows. And to Cody's point here, when you have Zubats and his size as a big bruising 7-footer, and then you have Paul George, who's 6'9", and then you have Amir Coffey, who's a big 6'6", 6'7" dude, whatever he is. And then Harden is kind of like the power forward sometimes because he's so strong. He's so physically sturdy, so you can put him in situations where, as long as he doesn't have to stretch to the perimeter, he can kind of be big and physical defensively. The Clippers are very interesting, right? And Terrence Mann is 6'6", right? Yeah.
I don't know. I'm interested that the Mavericks just went into this game and it seemed like they were let's play this like another regular season game. I am interested to see what kind of adjustments they are, because I still think this series is far from being over. The Clippers just did a good job of coming out and making the first punch, which is obviously really important when you need 4 games. But I'm expecting some interesting adjustments from Jason Kidd coming in. But of course, Ty Lue himself is, like you called out, just one of the great playoff adjusters that we have. So it'll be interesting to see what else he has up his sleeve.
Cody, do you know what the offensive rating was in the first weekend of the NBA playoffs? Well, you chew on that.
Ooh, okay.
Well, you chew on that. I will remind everyone that offensive rating by month got up to like 117 something a couple months ago, before the NBA put in the points of emphasis to allow more physicality, mostly on drives, mostly allowing defenders to exist on a basketball court. And so we finished the season around 115. We went from we were trending 117. We kind of finished the last couple months at 115. What do you think, small sample, what do you think the opening weekend games were?
All right. I sent this in our group chat where I said, what did I say? Half of the teams didn't score 100. So it's definitely going to be hovering around 100. It can't be 100. No, I'm going to say 106. 106 was the offensive rating.
It was 109.8.
Okay.
109.8. You forgot the Celtics existed. That's
Oh, yeah. They kind of throw the curve, don't they?
Yeah. But that is very interesting because there were games, and certainly the end of the the whole OKC Pelicans game, and we can get into that series in a future episode. There were games like that where all of a sudden you have to make a ton of isolation mid-range shots because you can't just blow by anyone anymore. The reason you can't blow by anyone anymore is they know they're allowed to touch you. They know they're allowed to make contact with you as you try to angle by them. And I made a joke a couple episodes back about the differences in officiating, where in the old days you actually had to drive by someone to drive by them. And this weekend in most situations, we were back in that place. And it changes the dynamic of some of these offenses because, look, we're talking about adjustments and how you're going to play Luka in this situation and all that. The shot quality for the Mavs in that game, especially when you account for Luka's skill and Kyrie's skill, is still probably better than every team's shot quality in all of the 2000s or something like that. You're still taking 30-something% three-point shooters, giving them decent looks. A 15-foot midi from Luka is still pretty good without too much defensive attention compared to, the triple teaming days. Kobe Bryant and Tracy McGrady shooting against 3 guys, fadeaway 19-footers or 23-footers with their feet on the line or something like that. So it's still pretty good. But I don't know about you, Cody. I just felt like there were already in game 1 situations where teams were like, our actions that usually get us regular season 2024 basketball shots, which are, where are all the open threes? Where are all my free throws? Where are all the layups? Yeah, they go away. And then you're left with okay, I can't get by this guy. So now I have to go. Now all of a sudden I'm in my bag. As Cody likes to say, now all of a sudden I'm a real hooper. Where can someone get a shot? You know who got shots in the game last night, the Pelicans-Thunder game? Brandon Ingram, special basketball. CJ McCollum, just ISO mid-range, spin off the pivot foot. And Edwards had one. It was a travel. They didn't call it, where he put Durant in some kind of spin cycle, spinning up and under. It was a subtle travel where he repositioned his pivot foot and then went to the step through. Those are the moves you need in those situations. And all of a sudden in one weekend, I think I saw more of those possessions than in the entire regular season combined. That might help teams that have great, tough shot makers. Not sure.
I very casually watched Pelicans Thunder, so I'm going to pitch in one thing before I take what you said and carry it to a different series. And what I want to say is I'm pretty sure, I tried to do a cursory search, that Chet Holmgren's 5 blocks is tied for the second most blocks by a rookie in a playoff debut. Do you want to get, maybe you saw it, but do you want to guess who has the most blocks in a playoff debut than, I guess, who has the most blocks in NBA history?
In a playoff debut?
Yeah,
I did not see this, by the way.
Oh, okay. By a rookie. In a rookie playoff debut.
In a rookie playoff debut, the most blocks. Is it Tim Duncan?
It is not Tim Duncan.
I don't know, because Kareem was before blocks. So
He was before blocks.
yeah.
So Chet was tied for second at 5, coming in at number 1 with 9 blocks.
Wait, is it Akeem?
It is Manute Bol.
Oh, I forgot about it. He doesn't even count. Manute Bol's never a rookie.
9 blocks.
Yeah,
Ben.
he was never a rookie. Don't you know that?
Incredible. What a champ. Yeah. Anyway, so what you were saying in terms of offenses not being able to get to the shots that they really wanted to get to, I felt that the most in the Minnesota-Phoenix game. Like, I feel like when I was watching, every second that the Suns had the ball, I was just like, their offense doesn't seem imaginative. There's no creativity. There's no zhuzh, so to speak. There's nothing that's just getting the wheels turning out here. And I wasn't sure what was going on. There were some possessions. Karl Anthony Towns was just starting on Devin Booker, and they weren't doing anything to take advantage of it. And like you said, Anthony Edwards is in people's faces. Jaden McDaniels, tremendous defensive. Rudy Gobert, I think Kevin Durant was complimenting Rudy Gobert before game 1. He was like, actually, this guy's really good at defense, and this is going to be a hard series. And he was right, because Gobert's out here just picking his pocket and he didn't lead the fast break. I think Edwards came and got that. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I mean, just unbelievable defensive performance from them. Another thing from that game, Ben, Phoenix had a 7% offensive rebound rate, and the Timberwolves had a 34% offensive rebound rate.
Yeah, they crushed them. Yep.
They could feel the size both on the rebounding game and the defensive game, and that's one of those games where I watch it, and do I think the Wolves are going to win by 30 every game? No. But I watch it, I'm like, man, I don't know how many counters the Suns have to this inertia that the Timberwolves are coming with.
That was the one where the size felt the biggest to me, the gap. Mm-hmm. They just felt they were enormous. They were everywhere. They eat up length. They dominate. They were stronger. They were more physical. Just scooping offensive. Rudy Gobert is just chucking people. I mean, there probably should have been some fouls. Honestly, there was one. He just took Nurkic and he's like, "I heard you weigh a lot," and then he judo throwed him down to the. Can you judo throwed? It was horrible English. He judo threw him onto the court and then dunked it. Yeah. It's been fun. It's a fun opening weekend. We have a lot of topics that I'm deliberately not queuing into right now because we got to wait a couple more games to see what happens. But there's so many fascinating things with all. There's so much on the line for all these teams, Cody. The reputations, the legacies, everything is on the line in the next game. Everything.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think everyone is just waiting to see what the Jalen Suggs game too is. Like, what is the bounce back game for Jalen Suggs going to look like?
All right. Okay. Well, we've done it. We've come to the end of the show, and I think we should give Cody his 2 minutes for the Magic, the NBA TV series, the Hodek special. He's the only game he watched live, deep scouting all weekend, just a constant stream of text messages about John Isaac's shot selection and what Gary Harris is doing on the back line and switching screen navigation. So, Cody, 2 minutes. The floor is yours. Wow. Cavs Magic. I know we didn't get the result we wanted in game 1. Talk to us. How we doing?
I'm openly rooting for the Magic in this series. I love this team so much. So this is the first, I don't know why, this is the only series where I'm like, you know what? Screw technology. I'm just going to write down my notes.
Okay, if you're not watching on YouTube, Cody just took out a notebook from like 1984, and he has a bunch of scribbled notes about the Magic game. Yeah, go ahead. What do they say?
Well, first of all, I think my favorite thing I wrote down is at 10:40, one of the color commentators, when there was a late whistle, said, patient whistle on the drive. And that's just like the most euphemistic way to call out the ref.
Who's calling the game?
Sort of
Who is calling this game? Is it like streamers from Twitch? Like,
no.
Who do they have on this call?
I don't remember. They did a great job. I remember thinking that, actually. I'm like, whoever's got this NBA TV, they're doing a really good job.
Was that the Beth Mowens?
Yes. Oh,
okay. Yeah. That crew's good. Yeah,
absolutely. They were doing a great job during that game. But I don't know. The Magic seemed very shaky. It was like when they played against the Bucks at the end of the year. Like, it just didn't feel like they were. I don't know. They just didn't know how to put the ball in the basket. The Cavaliers did a great job of getting Paolo Banchero to get a lot of turnovers, because here's the thing. God. Here's the issue. The Magic were really struggling to put the ball in the hoop. But Paolo Banchero was basically the only guy that could be like, all right, it's like the Brandon Ingram thing you were talking about.
It's evergreen. It's the most evergreen statement about your Orlando Magic anyone's ever made.
It's the truth, though.
Who else is going to do it?
He's going out there hitting some tough shots, but then he was also making some tough passes because the Cavaliers were like, all right, this is the only guy that's going to go out there and try and do something. So offensively, I'm really interested to see exactly where they can develop. There was a point where the Cavs missed 9 straight threes. That was pretty tough for them, but it didn't really matter because they were able to play really well. Franz Wagner, I found it really interesting when they made him the primary defender of Jared Allen, because here's the thing. John Isaac going out there and starting for the Magic,
really
I almost feel like that was nullified. That was somewhat nullified by Jared Allen. That was something I marked down because in terms of what we're talking about with the size, Jared Allen's a big dude. He's kind of got the Ivica Zubac thing where he's just like bigger and stronger than you anticipate. And it just kind of took them out of their defensive weirdness game.
Okay. Cody, this is what the people want to know. Game 2. What's the forecast? We're back in Cleveland. Can Orlando score more than 85 points? Jalen Suggs can make threes, right? He can do this.
I think so.
Gary Harris and Jalen Suggs can make 6 threes in this game.
Wait, is that a question or a statement?
It's both. We gotta move on. We gotta end the show. I just want to know, how are we feeling about Game 2?
I feel like that was the best I've seen Cleveland playing in a while. I think the Magic are going to get a little bit more comfortable. I think the Cavs, I don't know. I didn't quite believe it. Orlando isn't going to have a 37% effective field goal percentage as a team. Like that's shockingly low.
Are you confident in that statement?
I should look that up. Next time you talk, I'm gonna see how low that is historically, but that's really bad. I don't know. I'm feeling less confident about my Magic pick, but I do think that this series still has a lot of juice to squeeze out.
I think the Magic pick is wrong, unfortunately.
Just straight up wrong.
I don't know if they can get enough points to win for these playoff basketball games. But I'm still a believer. I need to see. I'm just curious if we're not going to get the life until we get back to the beautiful O-Rena, as they used to call it in Orlando, which then became the Amway Center, which is now something probably totally else. I can't keep up. I've reached the age where I can no longer keep up with the corporate name changing of NBA arenas. What is that arena called?
I have no idea. We're going to go the 70s. I'm still looking up some stats right here.
What is going on?
Well, here's the thing. I tried to look up effective field goal percentage, like the lowest in NBA history.
Yeah.
And you get something from like the 50s where it's like they shot 12% for effective field goal in 1952.
It's called the Kia Center. That's where they play. The Orlando Magic play at the Kia Center.
The Kia Center. Okay. This isn't even close to the worst shooting game in NBA history. There are some bad ones out there. There are some stinkers. The New Orleans Hornets in 2004.
Go to Patreon.
26% effective field goal percentage.
/
Unreal.
Thinking basketball. Do you want to keep going?
Do it. Okay, we should say one sentence about every other series. Let's say one sentence about the other series.
All right, rapid fire. Okay.
Bucks Pacers.
Dame Lillard had lots of hot shooting, and I haven't seen anything other than his field goal attempts.
I'm impressed that you made it a compound sentence. That was some good stuff.
You didn't say there were limitations on the sentence.
I didn't say there was. No, I didn't.
Yeah. I've been called unnecessarily verbose before. Logorrhea. Yeah, can keep going.
For me, the sentence would be, I'm still nervous with Giannis being out, but I still think the Bucks will win this series.
Why are you nervous? You hate the Bucks.
Well,
okay. What's
Giannis being on the court would actually hurt the Bucks. You're
slightly
right.
Too many inside jokes at the end of this show. Name another series?
Lakers Nuggets.
Beautiful. I could watch 150 games in a row of those teams playing.
Are you just saving all the takes for that one because you wanna get cozy up with that series first?
Oh, I was cozy with Game 1. I think here's the thing. If you're a fan of one of those teams or you're really analytically interested in those series, I mean, a couple of them, like Celtics Heat, were just probably nothing's going to happen unless something crazy happens. But I think with some of these other series, there's probably stuff to get to. But Denver, LA, we just had them play last year. Mm-hmm. So unless something new happens or unless the Lakers can get like a game or two in the next couple games and make it 2-1, 2-2, something like that, I'm going to just keep that one on the simmer. I'm going to keep it on the back burner. I'm going to keep it simmering. Sorry, that was more than a sentence, but you probed.
One thing I want to say about that game is DeAndre Jordan came in and immediately forgot to set a pin down on a baseline out of bounds play, and you could see he's like slapping, like, oh crap, I forgot to set the screen. But then the next two plays, he gets a block at the rim, and he strips AD. And I'm like, DeAndre Jordan giveth, and DeAndre Jordan taketh away.
What's the last series? I can't remember.
Was that not all of them?
I'm pretty sure we're missing a series.
Celtics Heat. Did we say anything about them?
Oh, I did say something about Celtics Heat.
Okay.
That's
Thunder
it.
Pelicans.
Thunder Pelicans. Give me more. I need more, baby.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll say we'll talk about this when we get to this series. But if we're doing one sentence shout outs shout out to the New Orleans defense. Maybe the best game I've seen CJ McCollum play defensively in his whole career. And I just love the Herb Jones, Trey Murphy III, Larry Nance, the winginess, Ingram's length. It was spectacular.
Yeah, that's a lot of length. Ooh, can I ask you a maybe semi-philosophical question?
Yeah, no one's listening anymore. Yeah.
Here's what we have to end with. Who is the best version of KCP in NBA history? Because watching the Nuggets, I was just in love with KCP's game.
How can you just leave that out there at the end of the show?
This is what people that wait around can.
Is Michael Cooper the best version of KCP in NBA history?
Wow. I like
Patreon.com/thinkinbasketball. That's the way to directly support us. We've got a stats board. Our playoff stats are going to be kicking off at some point soon. I'm excited about that. Patreon community, a Discord community, and a ton more. Cody, there's just so much. I'm just so excited.
Speaking of 80s Lakers, did you see James Worthy saying that Nikola Jokic is a combination of Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
James Worthy knows basketball. Thanks for listening to this show, and I hope you're enjoying the playoffs, and as always, that you are having a great day.